A lot of people right now are describing the same feeling. I see it all the time. Exhausted, overwhelmed, and feeling like every system that they touch, be it healthcare or housing or food prices or democratic institutions, each of them has been turned into a pressure point, something to just make their life harder. And then, on top of that exhaustion, comes the next layer, the feeling that nothing changes, that this is just how it is, and that the people applying the pressure have already won. The game is over. And that feeling has a name, and it also has a history. So I want to take you to New York City in November of 1909. The garment industry at that time is booming. Tens of thousands of workers, most of them young immigrant women, are making shirtwaists in lower Manhattan factories. And the hours are brutal, and the wages are low, and the conditions are very dangerous. And if you speak up, you get fired, fined, or beaten. Now the system is designed to make each worker just feel completely alone, and at that point it's working. Each individual worker can be replaced. Each individual complaint can be ignored. The bosses control the wages, the hours, the factory floor, and in a lot of cases, the ability to speak at all. The courts and the police largely back the owners, and the political class is mostly indifferent. And that might just sound familiar. And on November 22nd, thousands of workers packed into Cooper Union. That's a meeting hall in Manhattan. They're there to talk about whether to go on strike. Now, union leaders give speech after speech offering support and stressing caution. And for hours, general terms and delay and the kind of talk that takes up space without actually doing anything. And then a 23-year-old woman named Clara Lemlich walks into the front of the room. And she had already been arrested 17 times. And during the organizing fight, she had 6 ribs broken by hired thugs. And she faced down violence from the police and the factory owners' enforcers. Now, at that point, she's still injured. And she walks through the podium anyway. And she says, "I'm a working girl. One of those who are on strike against intolerable conditions. I'm tired of listening to speakers who talk in general terms. What we are here to decide is whether we shall or shall not strike. I offer a resolution that a general strike be declared now." And the crowd votes yes. The next morning, roughly 15,000 shirtwaist workers take to the streets. And as the strike spreads, that number grows to more than 20,000. Now here's what they actually did. They stopped participating in a system that depended on their silence. They formed picket lines. They accepted arrest. 723 people arrested in a single month. 19 sentenced to the workhouse, by the way. They accepted violence. They accepted lost wages. And they made their private suffering public. They forced newspapers, politicians, reformers, and the wider city to confront conditions that had been hidden behind factory walls. People who had been treated as disposable suddenly became impossible to ignore. Now, the honest version is that the strike was a partial victory. Some factory owners settled and others resisted. Some workers got better wages and hours, and a lot of workers still needed stronger protections. And then, in March 1911, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory burned. We talked about this before. 100 and 46 workers died. Mostly young immigrant women from the same garment workforce that had been fighting these conditions for years. And that happened because workers found exit doors locked or impossible to open, and the fire escape failed, and firefighters' ladders couldn't reach them. The fire happened after the strike because of what the strike had helped build: the organizing, the visibility, the political pressure. New York responded with a major factory investigation and a wave of new workplace safety reforms. The strike did change the terrain, but the fire forced the issue into the open, and finally the reform started to follow. So here's the point. Despair has a function. When people believe their suffering is private and personal to them, and that they're powerless, they don't act. So the pressure stays invisible, and that allows the system to stay intact. Clara Lemlich and the 20,000 workers broke that logic. They acted before they were safe, for sure. They acted before they were even certain that they could or should. They turned private exhaustion into public action and forced the country to answer for conditions it had chosen to ignore for a long time. The people applying the pressure are counting on you to believe nothing changes. At least nothing changes for the better. And history is a long record of ordinary people proving them wrong. I'll see you soon.